Series of the day. Let's get it started.
Boarcontrol versus Danswf.
And what a series we have on our hands then. One player must exit the tournament after this one. And we're going to kick things off with a priest versus a rogue here.
Not a Highlander priest either. Dan did actually tell me this morning, this is one of the decks I knew about. It is the Dragon combo version, if you couldn't tell already, by the fact there's two clerics and a Twilight Drake there. Just to finish the point I was going to make earlier, since Boar has been full-time, as Derek was saying, he's been impressing everyone. His stream numbers have been great. He at Patches and Callister. All right, let's get to the game.
Yeah, this is kind of a double-edged sword. I very often find myself thinking when I end up in these situations of when I draw Callister and Patches, would I rather have this or neither? Place your bets, guys.
I'd rather have this.
You'd rather have both than neither?
Neither. You'd rather have neither. Because the whole reason that Callister is so good is because you can pull Patches out and it's a 2-2.
But I just think Callister is good anyway. You're still buffing everything.
Okay, maybe it depends on the matchup. So, like, in a more tempo-orientated game, the Callister is only good because of Patches.
I've turned Derek's mic off because we don't care what he thinks.
Oh, that's what's going on. Come on, Derek.
Yeah.
Let us know.
I turned it back on. I was very tempted to just walk away and let you two kill each other to death, but
but this is why I love Hearthstone. I love disagreements.
You're not going to tell us the answer?
There is no answer.
I think, yeah, there is no
What's
answer.
the answer, Derek?
Exactly. I would say it depends. In a slower matchup, you can get the value out of Callister. In a quicker matchup, you need to make sure you're pulling ahead earlier on.
That's exactly what I was saying.
All right then, mate. That's exactly what I was also just saying.
In a more tempo-orientated matchup, it's important to get the Patches buffed from the deck.
Orientated or oriented?
I'm saying orientated intentionally. Not sure whether it's to trigger Derek or to suck up to Lorinda, but I'm saying orientated.
I mean, now you're trying to set us against each other.
Yes. Well, that's what I should be doing. That's not your job.
Right.
That's definitely what I
It's
should be
your
doing.
job to make the other two casters kill each other.
Yes.
Right. Brilliant. Okay.
Someone has to end the show. You two can be in a bloodbath. Anyway, Hearthstone is happening in front of us, and you know, I don't think Dan looks as nervous as he did in his first series of the day.
I would have to agree with you because he's got a very, very nice hand to get things going. Double Northshire in combination with the Divine Spirit, if it were to stick around, would be a great way to get this just in a position where it cannot die until the Valspine comes down. But for Boarcontrol, he does have the ability and immediately chooses to kill it off. As for Danswf, he now has to make a slightly more impressive board with nothing available to him at the moment on board.
Now, this is a combo deck in the truest sense that Dan's playing at the moment as well. For a while, I think when it first came out, Razakus Priest was being considered a combo deck. Combo Druid used to be considered a combo deck, and then we kind of realized, oh wait, no, these are just very aggressive decks. A real combo deck is where you have all of these little pieces and you have to put them together somehow, hopefully in the combo, but sometimes you have to use them up a little bit early. And this deck is like that. It's one of the more difficult decks in the game to play because you have to work out when to hold onto the resources, when to play them, etc., etc.
I agree, but this isn't, even though it's called Combo Priest, I don't think this is really a combo deck. Like, it's a tempo deck. You play to get ahead on board. You could win the vast majority. You could win your games very happily without getting Divine Spirit or Inner Fire ever.
But it has the combo win condition.
Yeah. Whereas,
as an option.
Yeah, like a combo deck was OTK Worgen Warrior, where your win condition was the combo. That was pretty much the only way you could win the games. Whereas obviously there are very powerful combos within this deck. That's not the primary way that I think it's going to be winning a lot of the time. The primary way it's going to be winning is just through getting a board that it's very difficult for the rogue to deal with through those cards like Divine Spirit and Inner Fire.
This is a really ugly turn for Boar as well.
Horrible.
Like, I would say you can tell from Boar's reaction, but again, this is his pose that he makes through every single turn.
Like, Boar, you're going to be a dad.
Well, some people probably do have that pose.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably not a good good phrase.
However,
yeah, he just... What does playing Elven Minstrel do? He may end up playing it here because maybe it won't be too impactful in this matchup. He does end up just going for it here, but that is just devastating.
This is not the first tempo Elven Minstrel that we've seen today either.
Yeah.
In fact, it was Dan this morning that played 2 Elven Minstrels in one game, neither of them getting their combo effect.
Minstrels.
And so looking at this turn now, for Dan. He had the option to just go Tark Reaper on the previous turn, which is what I was definitely looking at right out the gate. But he's gone with the opposite way round, going for Tark Reaper now instead. Do you think it's worked out better, worse, or kind of the same for him?
I don't know. It's just not looking good for Boarcontrol at the moment. Generally, I think. There is a Divine Spirit sitting in Dan's hand, along with the huge Tark Reaper he has on the board. Fastbind Slayer isn't playable this turn. Dan is very close.
Well, he's not that close. He's over there.
It's quite a considerable distance. But
Yeah, I would say.
Did you actually point at him or point at the screen then?
I pointed at him.
Okay. There are screens everywhere.
I wonder.
That's just a random comment, really. Let's
It's an
get back to
episode
the
of
game.
Black Mirror.
How topical of you.
Available on...
Other programs are available
I
on
haven't
various
haven't
devices.
seen the latest season yet. Really looking forward to it, though.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
I mean, you could basically just tape a knife to your phone and you've basically just watched it. But on this particular turn for Boarcontrol, the only card... I mean, the card that looks best for me is obviously Scalebane, just as the single most powerful minion. But I think he's considering fairly heavily Leroy Jenkins on that turn, because obviously it allows him to take out the high health minion, which you want to do always against this combo Priest because of Valspine Slayer, and he could take out the Northshire Cleric. But I think because he has Valspine and an Activator, he's a little bit happier at leaving up this very high health minion, because as long as he doesn't die, he can just take it out on the following turn.
I feel like he wished he had one more mana through the last few turns, just being able to activate the Minstrel, activate the Valspine Slayer. At least next turn, his patience is going to pay off. We think he is probably confident that he's not going to die this turn.
And now for Dan, how does he most effectively push his advantage here? Because we could obviously see something like Cabal Talon Priest Divine Spirit, which against a lot of decks would seem incredibly powerful, because then you have a minion that's basically never going to be removed through minion damage and has to be killed off by a hard target removal. But obviously against Rogue, there is that ever-present threat of Valspine. So instead, I'm thinking maybe Draconic Operative just as a powerful minion.
I think that's the obvious play, right? 5 mana, 5/6 in itself is strong enough. He's actually going to go with the Duskbreaker and clear away everything just to remove what Boar has. That feels like a very slow play to me.
Yes, it does. However, it does work very well considering Boar was about to use the Valspine Slayer on the 3/7.
I think this is Dan making a hard read that there's Valspine in hand, because when your opponent has done basically nothing for the first few turns of the game, they played Keleseth, which was, okay, yeah, that's definitely something you played in the early game. But after that, just an unactivated Elven Minstrel, basically.
Yeah.
You're just so expecting, I think, for there to be a Valspine Slayer.
There's one problem with that. There's one problem with the fact that Dan has played around the Valspine Slayer. And that problem is the fact that it is still there in the hand even now, which means Dan is going to have to continue playing around it. He can't really stick anything big-ish to the board ready to combo, because as soon as he does, Boar's going to get rid of it.
That's actually a pretty good point, and maybe therefore he should have tried to bait it out with just the big Tark Reaper, or maybe even just with the Draconid Operative if he played that last turn.
Yeah.
Unless he's just going to go down the route of later using one of Boarcontrol's minions against
Boar's minions, smack him in the face with it. That's a good plan.
But then again, this deck, I believe, will not be running Dragonfire Potion, because the vast majority of lists I've seen top out at Lyra the Sunshard.
Yep.
And because of that, you do need to make sure that you are ahead on board, or at least even, because your catch-up mechanisms are pretty much capped out at about 3 damage, be it from Duskbreaker sweeps or from all the nonsense you can pull off with Wild Pyromancer.
One thing I will say is that Lyra is one hell of a win condition for this deck. It's easy to forget about it, because obviously Highlander Priest has been the popular Priest deck for quite some time. But when you're running Lyra and 2 Radiant Elementals, that leads to some crazy shenanigans.
Yeah, and Dan showing once again what appears to be his biggest weakness in this tournament, which is just stress. He is allowing the pressure to get to him, roping out every turn. Obviously, a lot of players just consider it the best way to play your tournaments, because you're taking every second available to you to think about your turns. But when it comes down to mechanical play, not being able to fit the time in, that's when it gets a little bit more dicey.
That being said, when Dan was playing against Toast earlier, Leroy was casting with us, and he suggested that if Toast started roping every turn from that point onwards, it would be literally with the intention of tilting Dan, and that no matter what Dan drew, there's no way he would win that game.
I mean, Leroy said that about George C. He said, if I tilt him in the first game, there's literally no way I can lose this series either. So it seems like a pretty cut and paste argument he goes for. Maybe it's just UK Hearthstone players, though. We're an angry lot.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as a nation, we don't like queuing. That's not really very fun, is it? You have to queue for a bus.
Don't like the rest of Europe, apparently.
Europe. The sun.
Boarcontrol was queuing for quite a while yesterday into his rank 2 matchup.
Yeah. Almost wrote an angry letter.
To the Prime Minister.
Dear Teresa. Look at this, come on. Not in my country.
All right, so there are 2 Potions of Madness sat in Dan's hand, which means he can afford to use one if he would like, and still have the second as a win condition later on. Let's see what this operative is offering him.
I think you're overvaluing how good Potion of Madness is going to be. Maybe I haven't played enough of this matchup, but I think if he can use it to clear the board, he's just so happy in that scenario.
It's just the fact that it can end up being the only way of winning the game if you can't stick anything. It can get to the point where Boarcontrol himself, he has a board, you do not, you have no way of activating the combo. Oh wait, I'll take that Valspine, double its health twice, and smack Boar in the face with it.
So now in this scenario, Boarcontrol can just push forward a lot of damage, being able to attack in with the 3-1, backstab and hero power to kill off the operative, and then he's going to be pushing forward, what, 7-11 damage, and being able to play a creeper as well.
I just realized, sorry, I don't think we've made this entirely clear. So for that one person in Twitch chat shouting at us, telling us Fastbind Slayer has more than 2 attack, you cannot Potion of Madness it, that's where the Twilight Acolyte comes in. We haven't seen it in Dan's hand yet, but it will definitely be a 2-of in the deck. It swaps its own attack with another minion, it has 2 attacks, so you give the Valspine or the Corridor Creeper even better 2 attack, then take it, then double its health, then hit him in the face with it.
There you go, Mum. Now you know.
Now Dan Gaskin's mum understands.
She probably will be watching as well, so.
Hey, Dan Gaskin's mum.
I doubt my mum knows what Potion of Madness does anyway, though.
Mine certainly does not.
Yeah.
They do. It's just not a Hearthstone thing. It's something that
Oh, right.
that's
from
what
back
they
in the
call
80s.
you, basically.
What, the Potion of Madness?
Yeah, you are the Potion of Madness.
All right, Derek.
I'm going to be up all night thinking about what on earth that could possibly mean. But in this instance, Boarcontrol has, just because of that Dustbreaker, found himself in an instance where he is so far behind. It needed to be exactly that, I believe, from Danswf in order to turn this around, because he could not clear it off with just the one, and with this ridiculous amount of burst damage that's left available to Boarcontrol, he could have easily closed out the game on the following turn.
But instead, he's posed with a very odd turn where you kind of want to put Leroy Jenkins on the board just because, you know, you haven't got anything else to do, but at the same time, it doesn't really work out well with your game plan.
Oh, it's not even buffed. I hadn't kept track of whether it was buff drawn before or after the Keleseth buff, but this is definitely the line of play I was looking at. You just try to stick Leroy as much as possible, and to be honest, it's not actually weak to all that much. Potion of Madness doesn't hit it. You've seen 3 Dustbreakers at this point, I believe. So there's not all too much that can clear this off the board.
That's probably why the attack and health of minions are just cut off the bottom of the screen there. It's to confuse us casters, so that we never know what's going on.
Probably, yeah.
Do you like to play with fire?
Dan definitely feels like he likes to play with fire right now, as this removes everything Boarcontrol has. And as you rightfully said at the start of this game, Derek, this deck can just win as a tempo deck, and that's exactly what it's doing.
Yeah, that's what it does in these aggressive matchups. You just hope to get Dustbreaker as much as possible, because if you don't, very often your deck just falls apart. And if you do, you're in with a very good shot of just winning the early game. And in this instance, although Danswf's combo Pre's top decks very poorly indeed, it's already ahead on board, so it could win with just the cards in hand.
There are so many Dans in the studio today.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Dan, SWF, all 3 of us, Frodan, we're everywhere.
Didn't you say in the studio today?
I did.
Yeah, and
Is Frodan here?
That's what I said.
get down. Quiet, Frodan.
So there was the option, if you wanted to use the Inner Fire here, which he is going to use, of course. Unfortunately, it doesn't produce like an easy trade,
Yeah.
but it does the job.
With Leroy gone, you know, Shadow Step doesn't do anything. Bone Mare doesn't win the game on the spot. He would still win, I believe, if Bone Mare came down. Actually, would he? It would go up to 9. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah, it would have won anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's going to be game. Dan takes the first one, and if you needed anything to settle your nerves as a nervous player, winning the first game is certainly going to do that. Boarcontrol might be slightly aggravated by losing that first game. Of course, the concern I have for Boarcontrol is he knows that he is one of the best players here. I think he would hold himself in quite high regard. And then if you are starting to lose against a player that maybe you think you are better than that, suddenly the frustration can start to settle in for those better players.
I would like for everyone to please note that the score for Dragon Priest 2-0 in this tournament.
It's a good deck. I don't think anyone's disputing that.
It is
I just
performing phenomenally on ladder for one, and well, in this tournament it's shown its.
There's so many potential priest decks at the moment. That's the problem, and so it's easy to say, oh, everyone's going to be playing Razaka's priest, but then
it is easy to say that because it's probably true.
Yeah, but then there's Big Priest as well, which has fallen out of favor recently. There's been Spiteful Summoner Priest, which has been being played a lot in the last couple of days, and also Zixo won Seed Story Cup with that deck. But now there is this combo Dragon Priest, which I believe is probably the second best priest deck.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with you on that front. I think Big Priest is a thing of the past for the moment because it's not even favored against Razaka's Priest anymore. Even beforehand it was like middle, and it was played because it was such a high Druid format, and it did very nicely against the Jade Druids. But now with Jade Druid a lot less popular, it's a lot less favored against Razaka's Priest with Psychic Scream being introduced, and it's not that good against aggro either. It's not going to be finding any place in a tournament lineup for the moment, I would say.
It's weird that I've completely lost track of what I was about to say. Never mind.
It is weird.
Something's weird.
There is a lot of weirdness in the world as Boar is.
I'm back with it. It's weird. It's weird that Big Priest has fallen out of favor now, given how strong the Spellstone is. That's what I was
I think it is mainly because of Psychic Scream, right? The fact you can just shuffle them all back in.
Absolutely.
And be like, now what do I do? It is good because I hate Big Priest, and we're not going to talk about it anymore. Raza is there for Boarcontrol, so of course he is going to be keeping that one, but he is going to be going up. Oh, that's a nice mulligan, but he is going to be going up against the aggro Druid here, which can battle through a priest.
That's Paladin.
However, yeah, you know what I mean. Come on, I can clearly see it's a Paladin. It can battle through the priest, but of course the Spirit Lash, the Shadow of Pain, the Wild Pyromancer, they are all fantastic.
Pyromancer is a very big one because Boarcontrol can just save that and use it whenever he needs to. He's got the Spirit Lash that he can use first on these, the 2-1, the 1-1, and the 1-1s that are about to come from this Jungle Madness card. And then later on there's the Pyromancer with any other spells.
Every single card in Boarcontrol's hand is very, very nice up against this aggro Paladin. He didn't know until maybe the South Sea deckhand came down that it would be an aggro Paladin as opposed to a Murloc Paladin, but he is now going to be very happy indeed. But what he is going to be thinking now is, how can I best play around Divine Favor? Because what this play suggests is that he has very possibly a Divine Favor because he didn't go with the hero power, went all out with the minions, and he is pretty vulnerable to it now.
Yeah, the other option was what, Wild Pyromancer into coin to what, throwing out a Holy Smite?
I mean, you'd probably just do nothing. You'd probably just throw away the coin. It was worth considering, but pretty obviously it was just better to go for the Spirit Lash.
This is going to be a beautiful Divine Favor for Dan next turn, and that's exactly what he's been setting up for. It's the one way that he can get some more pressure and actually get through Boarcontrol's wall that he's about to put up. What do you think Boar does this turn? Is it just Acolyte and Pass?
Acolyte is pretty good here, but
Radiant Elemental might be worth considering.
Oh man, but
Radiant Pain Holy Smite would also empty his hand a little bit and play around Divine Favor.
You okay, Darek? You seem to be struggling with your emotions right
no,
now.
the thing is, if he does just play Acolyte though, that is so good for Dan because he can just draw so many cards.
Yep, and then play different,
Pyromancer, coin, Shadow of Pain.
Yeah, stuff like that is what I'm looking at.
I like Radiant Pain Smite because it means that he's using up a lot of cards in his hand. He's still got the Pyromancer to clear a board later on. If I'm literally forgetting what every card is called now. Call of the Recruiter. Let's go
Call to Arms.
Call to Arms.
Call I did just call it an aggro druid. So
Call the men is what we're referring to.
I don't know what you do in your own time, Dan, but
the main thing is ignoring Call to Men.
Why?
I love that Boarcontrol is taking his time with this play because this is an incredibly difficult decision to be making. He does, in the end, keep back the Holy Smite, which I can very much understand the reasoning for, because on the following turn, going for
Smite Pyro. Or Pyrosmite.
Yeah, I was looking at Acolyte, Coin, Pyrosmite, whatever nonsense, but that could, the mana wouldn't quite work out because you couldn't play it in the order you wanted to.
There's Call to Men. Call my men. Call
and
the men.
I think In your particular case, Falcone, you're...
Are you sure he's not Jerry Halliwell at this point?
I don't know what to do, Dan.
Finish your point.
I try my best,
Derek, finish.
but I do not succeed.
Finish your point.
I think I could very much agree with your line of play of going for Holy Smite with the Shadow Word Pain. Because you have Acolyte and Pyro to refill your hand, you do need to make sure you have refill up against this Paladin, because just because of the single card of Divine Favor, they have game for a surprisingly long amount of time.
Yeah. Whew. Just taking a moment.
Now, if I was producing the show, I'd probably play Jerry Halliwell.
I don't know who that is.
I don't know.
She was in Spice Girls, wasn't it?
Oh.
Rain. What is it? It's Raining Men. I think would have been an appropriate song right now for Falcone. No, just me. Okay.
So if a Boarcontrol, he's wondering, is it worth using my trump card of Wild Pyromancer for the moment? And I'm, to be honest, just thinking no. There's really not all too much pressure on the board for the moment. And even with a 0 mana heal, he can just fill out the rest of his turn so nicely.
I don't even think Boarcontrol plays the smart. Like, those two cards on the left are just staying in Boar's hand at the moment. Just playing the Novice and the Acolyte seems fine, even.
I wonder if it's worth playing Priest Feast, though, because that sets up kind of the strongest board you can. Acolyte, you don't need to preemptively set up, because going Pyro, Acolyte, Smite on the following turn does such a good job.
Oh, right, sure. I like it if he's doing this as well, playing the Holy Smite and just being as defensive as possible. The reason I didn't love Priest of the Feast is because later on, that could be so much healing.
Yeah, but it's just it's healing now, and it's a perfect body.
And playing it with the Holy Smite, hence defending it, I like that a lot more.
And I like using the Holy Smite here because of Blessing of Kings, exactly. That would have been very scary indeed for Boarcontrol if that had come down. It's obviously worth considering for Call to Arms. But the thing is, Call to Arms he can probably deal with anyway, whereas Blessing of Kings was actually very, very scary for him.
Reporting for duty.
So now Boarcontrol just needs any spell, basically. Any cheap spell he can possibly get his hands on. Power Word Shield would probably get the job done. I'd say that might actually be the perfect card to draw in this instance.
Play Acolyte as well, why the hell not?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And this is the danger when you are running an aggro Paladin into a Priest, is they do have so much tools for removal. And the fact now that Boarcontrol can just draw into more stuff as well, because there are instances where the Priest deals with all the early aggression, but then runs out of stuff. And they get to the point where they're just drawing one card after one card, and the Paladin manages to get aboard again, thanks to Recruit to Arms. And I don't know.
I actually almost expected to see the circle played as well, though.
Yeah, I did as well, actually. I think because there's such a little chance of the Pyro dying, but actually there's a good chance of the Acolyte dying. So maybe it was worth just cycling it there, because obviously if you can pick up an Organized Soul Priest, it's a great extra board clear. But I think it's a little bit more important to just cycle it there.
Drawing Cleric as well would...
That's
has
a
it
good
been played yet? I don't think it has.
Oh man, all these cards from Boarcontrol.
Yeah, Pyromancer just keeps on living on.
Oh, so strong.
Yeah.
I mean, how does he do it here? He can go Potion of Madness, attack it into the Corridor Creeper. It's then down to 2 health. And then what? Finish it off with Vision's Binding Heal, whatever. You can clear the board here 100%. This game is just over in Boarcontrol's favor. He just needs to make sure he's dumping enough cards from his hand so that a second Divine Favor can't pull this back for Dan.
And you've got the tools to dump everything as well. Like, they are all low-cost spells that you can just get rid of. And this just works out so nicely for Boar. And you're right. This is game over. He is going to be able to tie this one up 1-1. There is pretty much no comeback. Unless Boar did leave too many cards in hand, but with the cards in hand, he's going to be able to find those more removal spells, probably. It's going to be too hard for Dan. There's more removal.
Do you even need your Dragon? Doesn't even need any of these, does he?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Death because maybe there's some big card teched in there. I mean, you wouldn't play Tyrion in this lineup. Corridor Creeper dies to Dragonfire anyway. Goes with the Mind Blast.
Lanessa? No?
Yeah.
No way, I don't think we've even seen a buff.
Why do you think he's going for the Mind Blast, though? What's the reasoning behind this choice?
Just because he doesn't need the board clear. He doesn't need the Dragonfire Potion. Dan has run out of stuff. We've only seen one Call to Arms, right? So I guess there is the chance that he gets that, but the Pyromancer's still alive. And
Yeah, slight misordering.
Okay. So I just think it's simply the case that Boarcontrol doesn't feel as though he needs a board clear. He's got Psychic Scream in his hand too. Just win the game. Just get on and win.
Finishes the game quicker. He can Mind Blast to get rid of this, like dump his hand basically. But there are going to be 2 cards drawn for Dan, but I think at this point it's still going to be a bit too late.
Tarim kind of sucks immediately after you've played Leroy and given your opponent 2 1-1s.
So now Boarcontrol maybe wishing he hadn't gone for the Mind Blast, because he doesn't need to worry about keeping his card count low at all. Both Divine Favors have now come down for Danswf, but even then, it's probably just going to close out the game in the next couple turns. And what does Tarim do here? It just buffs his whole board.
Yep. Tarim does pretty much nothing. If Dan killed a 1-1 with his weapon first, then the Tarim would have at least tanked the damage that Dan was putting on the board, but it doesn't matter, as he finally concedes, and the score is going to be 1-1.
It is indeed. I would argue that that's not actually necessarily that favoured of a matchup for Boarcontrol to take. I would like my shots against Priest as the aggro paladin. I'd definitely rather be Murloc in that particular matchup because I think it's a little bit meatier of a deck, so you can get a bit more damage in the mid game, be a bit less resilient to the clears as we saw there with the Spirit Lash, for goodness sake. But just because of the power of Divine Favour, you're playing what in that instance, you were playing a 15-card deck or 20 cards up against your opponent's 10 or 15.
But would you favour yourself playing against Boarcontrol while lifting a Priest? That's the difference.
I'm not an idiot.
I know.
I'd rather you were a Murloc too, Dark.
I mean, and we're now going to be in the instance of which Paladin can actually get a victory. When we looked at Boarcontrol's initial game earlier on today, he wasn't able to find a victory with that Paladin, and he fell to the lower bracket because of it.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, is he going to struggle to find a victory with the Paladin? It's going to be whoever can actually get that one on the board. It's Rogue and Paladin left for both players. We could well see a mirror coming up next, depending on how this one is queued.
It would be pretty sad for the loser if he never manages to find a win with a Paladin deck, because obviously Paladin, Aggro Paladin and Murloc Paladin are both looked at as 2 of the strongest decks in Hearthstone at the moment, and if that ends up just being the deck that they cannot find a win with, that's not going to feel good for them when they leave this tournament.
Yeah, and Paladin should do so well in a universe where Warlock just does not exist, because that's obviously the hardest counter to the deck. And Boarcontrol here, keeping the Corridor Creeper. I know he's not quite as much as a fanatic of the card as some players are, especially with his Murloc Paladin deck. He thinks you should just be looking for Murlocs as aggressively as you can. But in this particular mirror, obviously Corridor Creeper is the tempo swing you need to pull ahead.
Meanwhile, one of these players has Keleseth and the and patches as well, which does make it worse, as we've established.
Yeah, meanwhile, he does also pick up patches.
It's nice to see justice served a little bit.
A little
to
bit.
be honest.
That's justice, is it, Dan?
A small dollop of justice.
We've seen a lot of Keleseth on 2 today.
And they've seen a lot of patches
I
being
think
drawn.
if you want justice, you've come to the wrong game.
Truth is
Okay, yeah, I think that's fair. The amount of Keleseth, we've seen Shadow Step Keleseth a lot today, and you're right, patches, I mean, Lorinda's the statistics man, but I think it's been drawn fairly often, even when Keleseth has been there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's again the discussion of would you rather have patches and Keleseth or neither.
It's so interesting.
In this
really
particular game, what do you think Dan is thinking? Would he rather have got neither, or is he happy to have the patches here because he'll get the buff?
Again, in the tempo mirror, just pulling out patches as a 2-2 is such a big difference, or 3-3 if you have South Sea Captain. I do think he would have preferred to not draw either.
I think if he is assuming his
Dan looks like he's about to explode.
Because I completely disagree. I just think, why wouldn't you want all of your minions to have +1/+1? It doesn't matter that you have a 1/1 in your
Because this matchup is just about tempo. It's about reacting to what your opponent could do and getting the biggest tempo swing possible. Pulling patches from your deck is a massive tempo swing. Activating Vilespine is probably the biggest tempo swing you can get. And this game, I'm stuck in the middle with you.
Not sung by Jerry Halliwell, by the way.
Fun fact for you.
By the way, for me, there's not much in it. Like, it's not like, oh, it's much better than yours either. It's very, very close. And against a control deck, you'd rather draw both than neither.
Yeah, very possibly. It's a tough one. I suppose for Dan as well, because he knows that he's got Corridor Creeper and his opponent may not. he's expecting that to be pretty valuable because Boarcontrol only kept one card. It hasn't been played yet. I think Dan, if he's worth his salt, kind of narrowed that down to Corridor Creeper or Valspine.
That's enough of a swing to make it worthwhile, I think. The double 3/4 on turn 4 with Taunt is very nice indeed.
Fair enough.
Might even have to bait out a Valspine here. That's really not nice. I guess Deckhand plus SI7 agent is okay with the backstab. It allows Boar to clear the board, but he's using up all of his own resources too.
Yeah, Boar just wants to get the best Valspine he possibly can. Going Valspine into turn 5, his opponent could respond with a Scale Bane, a Valspine of their own, a Corridor Creeper, something like that. I think he needs to be a little bit more optimistic in this scenario with his Slayer.
I don't like using both Backstab and Deckhand this turn either, because then you have no activator or Valspine next turn.
It's frustrating that there's not one more minion on the board, because if there were, Boarcontrol could trade everything. You could Backstab Valspine, trade everything in, and then get the Corridor Creeper as well as the Valspine for free, but that's not quite going to happen this turn.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I was going to say I can agree with pretty much most of what he does here as long as he plays the Corridor Creeper. But having said that again, maybe I just disagree with that because he doesn't want to present that big of a board for his opponent to get a strong Valspine because then he just loses. This is, I think, I just so often underestimate how reactive this deck in the tempo road can be, and you just don't want to give your opponent the value with their powerful tempo clears.
There are a lot of cheap 5/5s that are about to come out. Dans hits the board first.
Yeah, but Boar has that tempo swing. You know, Dan has allowed him to get value with the Valspine, which if there wasn't a big minion on board, would have been awful. I mean, obviously I agree, it was probably right to just start throwing down your big stuff here because the Valspine can only hit one of them. But it's not that bad of a spot for Boarcontrol.
No. Awkward that he can't really backstab anything that turn though. Like he hovered over the SI7 agent, doesn't quite have a way of dealing with the 3/3. It's a shame, but it's not the end of the world.
I mean, we're talking about tempo swings, but we're looking at a turn 7 Lich King. I think that is a massive advantage now for Dan. Unless Boar can draw something significant of his own, maybe a Bone Mare that can
that's
come
the
down
thing.
on a minion.
That's the reason that the Lich King is so significant here, and that's because there's no Bone Mare in either hand. Because landing a Bone Mare first in this matchup, getting it to stick to something, that is often the way you decide which player is going to win. But there's no Bone Mare present, so instead, Dan is going to have to rely on the Lich King, and Boarcontrol doesn't have anything big to contest that yet.
That's what Dan's big swing turn with the Corridor Creepers has allowed him. Because if there's only one Corridor Creeper, there would very possibly still be a minion knocking about for Boarcontrol in order to hit with that Bone Mare, which would change this game unbelievably much. In this spot, what can even be done by Boarcontrol? He can take out the best that he's got, but Dan can clear again, play the Lich King. Maybe he doesn't even clear, he could just start going for some face damage.
What would be the best result from Dan's Lich King as well, looking at this current board state?
Probably Army of the Dead. Just because then he can pull ahead so far, you're so likely to get only minions and not spells, obviously. But having said that, Death and Decay could be a very nice board clear. Death Coil could be a bit of extra burst damage. There's few bad options, to be honest.
Valspine from Dan as well. He's in such a great position here. But it's just, this turn is just so straightforward, right? He can clear the board with the minions that he currently has and then slam an 8/8. Yep.
I definitely agree, especially because Deadly Book Valspine is a possibility on the following turn if one-drop Bone Mare was picked up or a Lich King at Boarcontrol's own, although I doubt he's running it.
We don't see Lich Kings stick to the board that often, but this is looking like it might be one of those scenarios.
Doompact is kind of actually the one bad outcome here for Dan, because he's very much looking to be ahead on board himself, so he wanted any proactive card, and this is pretty much the one non-proactive card.
That's fine, though. It's not going anywhere. Boarcontrol cannot kill the Lich King.
Yeah, absolutely. He's very likely to be getting another roll if he doesn't just kill his opponent right now.
Yeah.
Very, very close to it.
Time to die.
That's a great voice.
Time to dine. Amazing.
What did he say? Time to die?
Time to dine.
Yeah, that would be a bit aggressive if he said the other thing you were thinking.
Come on, Derek. This is a
children's card game.
Family game.
No real comeback mechanism for Boarcontrol. He can delay the inevitable now, but he is just going to concede. And Danswf, the Super Wolves fan himself, is 2-1 up and 1 game away from knocking out Boarcontrol. And that would mean Boarcontrol would walk away in 7th/8th position.
And that would be a huge shake-up for this tournament. A huge upset, you could say, because I've mentioned this several times today. The players downstairs have been saying Boarcontrol is the only pro player here. And I think that's a little bit unfair. Some of these guys have been working really hard over the last couple of years. Again, Ben, 2nd place DreamHack. That's not something, you know, that we should take lightly. It's still a surprise, though. You wouldn't expect Boar to be in this position.
No, absolutely not. It so often seems to end up this way with a lot of the best players in tournaments. It feels so unlucky for them, because I agreed with the vast majority of what Boar was doing in these games. Maybe it just comes down to his deck selection, because he has just got a very generic lineup. It's not doing anything in particular that stands out to me. He's done what I expected. He's just got the 4 best decks, chucked them in a lineup, and obviously that can only ever be so bad. But maybe he should have read the meta a little bit more heavily, and I don't know, not got the Paladin, because the Murloc Paladin is so board dependent.
Now, in theory, Boarcontrol has a good shot in this matchup. Not as good a shot as he would against a Murloc Paladin, but a pretty good shot against the aggro Paladin. Yes, the aggro Paladin can go wide, and Rogues struggle to deal with that, but if Boarcontrol can pick up the backstab, the SI7 agent, he's in a great spot. There's the SI7 agent. Deckhand does good stuff, good things too, and Corridor Creeper's there as well.
Oh, this hand is perfect for Boarcontrol.
Yep.
Firefly Dagger shuts down so many of the early turns that aggro Paladin is trying to go for. And we could very possibly see a Firefly coming down. Now, the punish is Direwolf Alpha, so maybe instead he just goes with the South Sea Deckhand. He is getting a value trade with the patches, which is just priorities 1, 2, and 3 for Boarcontrol with his patches, with this road deck.
Instead, Firefly does come down, which will allow for the Direwolf Alpha to get value. Now, I remember Dan approached me before this tournament started. He said, all right, mate, who do you think is going to win this tournament? Probably hoping I would say him. I didn't. I said, I think Boarcontrol is going to win this tournament. He said, no, he's not, because I'll beat him. And that confidence, like, I was very surprised by that confidence. And then after seeing his first game, I was like, all right, okay, the confidence wasn't warranted. But actually now, he seems to be performing pretty well. He seems to have settled.
And like I said, he admitted that he underestimated how hard playing on stage would be. And maybe he is now coming into his own.
You just need that one. You need that one game you have jitters, and then from then on, you're clean sailing.
And from this, for the first few turns, I've agreed with pretty much everything that both of the players have been doing. It's pretty much been playing itself, but both players now have standout benefits for the next couple of turns. Corridor Creeper for 0 is obviously the MVP at the moment for Boarcontrol. On turn 3, this is what happens in these matchups. But call to arms, double call to arms for Dan is what's standing out for him, but that is a pretty mediocre selection of cards to be pulled out. I don't know if that's going to be getting him over the finish line.
No weapon on the board means the deckhand doesn't have charge, which is also disappointing. Boarcontrol can pretty much do what he wants with this board.
He's still got very strong lockdown of what's happening in the early turns. His follow-up, however, is not looking so strong.
We could even, if Boar wants to be greedy, he could even play a 1-drop Shadow Step it, play it again, and then play Edwin whilst clearing the entire board.
Yeah. I don't expect to see that from Boarcontrol. I think he's a player who will realize there's so many good outcomes for his Shadow Step with
so
what
maybe,
he draws off the top.
Maybe just the Edwin without the Shadow Step then, so 1-drop Edwin as a 4-4?
Yeah, I think that's a bit more likely. If we even see that...
Why not Tar Creeper?
Yeah. Tar Creeper is looking very good to me as well this turn.
Sure, the next turn, come out as a 6-6 both 1-drops, I guess, potentially.
I think just putting a taunt in the way against any aggressive deck is usually a pretty good thing to do.
Look, I like Edwin, okay? I like Edwin.
This protects against Rallying Blades so nicely, though, and Edwin will always be good. It's only a 4-4 here, whereas very likely it could end up as a 6-6, 8-8 at some point a little bit later on down the line.
Last 2-2? Oh, no, okay, it's the knife juggle animation, my bad. I got very confused for a second there.
Clearly. And the juggles not coming down quite where Dan needed them to. Really, I think just needed to kill off the Tar Creeper there. Oh, sorry, the Corridor Creeper to really have much of a shot.
Now this hand is looking really good from Boarcontrol, and that's looking like it might be the Shadow Step target.
Yeah, very possibly.
It's a shame that there's no weapon down, because right now, if Boarcontrol could play deckhand, charge it into the Knife Juggler or die, will then play Earthen Minstrel, that would be perfect.
I'm looking at stuff even like shadow stepping back the Corridor Creeper just to heal it if you can reduce its cost by enough.
That's interesting.
How much stuff can even die this turn? It would be...
Well, you shadow step it and it already costs 5 because of the discount.
I think you could, yeah, I think you could get 5 discount altogether, which means it could be played in combination with the deck hand and the dagger. It's probably not what he's going to be going for, but I would like the consideration at least, because healing for 4, 0 mana is pretty good here.
Yeah, trade into one of the 1/1s first,
and
obviously.
He doesn't need it with the Elven Minstrel whatsoever, because just activating Elven Minstrel once will win him the game.
It looks like he might be going for it.
He'd shadow step it back first, reduce its cost as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
I was not expecting that line of play to be what actually comes into effect.
He's going to heal the top creeper instead.
Oh, okay. Slightly different line of play, but same school of thought. And I like this a lot because he's realized with Elven Minstrel, as I said, he just needs 1 battle cry on this and he will have more than enough value to take the game.
Yep.
He maybe doesn't even want to activate it twice because of Divine Favor.
That's true, actually. It's funny. It's a weird matchup where you want to kind of keep your hand as low as possible. It's sort of like how you play against Druid and want to keep your board as thin as possible. Quality, not quantity.
Indeed. And if
Dan's
Boarcontrol,
smoking at me again.
it looks like he's going to have access to both. There's just nothing that Dan can do here. He can draw 2 cards maximum, depending on whether or not he can play the card he drew. Tarim, as is ever presently the out for Aggro Paladin, is not the out here. Wow. Yep, Creeper off the top is not going to get the job done, so I very much expect to see Boarcontrol rocketing into the lead here. He could play either the Guardian of Kings or the Swashbuckler Elven Minstrel. This makes sense as just the biggest tempo play onto the board, and he's still just staying pretty far ahead, keeping his card economy down because he will actually have that card on exactly Divine Favor, I think.
So the best thing about this result that is pretty much looking likely to happen of Boarcontrol taking this game is we are going to see a Paladin versus Paladin matchup of the Murloc Paladin versus the Aggro Paladin.
Wow.
We were saying that one of these, like, if one of these Paladin decks is the deck that lets the player down, they're not going to be feeling very good about that.
Yeah, and for Boarcontrol, that can't feel all too good, I would wager, because the major downside, and I suppose the major upside of Murloc Paladin, is you're so reliant on having Murlocs on board. And obviously, if you can stick the Murlocs, it's the most disgusting thing that can be done in the early game of Hearthstone at the moment.
As soon as that Gentle Megasaur comes down,
Exactly, you just win. But if you can't stick anything on board because of unidentified Maul, Rallying Blade, Patches, whatever other nonsense the Aggro Paladin can throw down, they don't care about having stuff on board necessarily. They're happy just to play whatever's in their hand whenever they've got it.
So the final game of the day is going to be a Game 5 in this series, and I think this is what this series deserved, to be honest. It would have been a shame if this had gone to like a 3-0 or something. It would have been a shame if we had seen Boarcontrol eliminated at 3-1. At least we know both players are battling right to the end to make sure they try and stay in this tournament, which I didn't think I would be saying about Boarcontrol, because if this isn't stressful enough for one of these players, they have to go on and win, I think, 5 more games or so tomorrow, which is just nuts.
Like 4 of the players have to fight tooth and nail for half the day just to get up to the top 3, to then join the other 2 that are just going to be chilling on morning.
So Paladin versus Paladin, and Darek, across the times we've had arguments about Paladin versus Rogue, etc. However, Paladin versus Paladin is not really something we've discussed too much. I think it's something that the community discusses a lot. Which is better, Aggro Paladin or Murloc Paladin? What are both of your general thoughts on this matchup?
I mean, I think in terms of just the power of the decks in a vacuum, Murloc Paladin seems to be creeping ahead, I would say, in terms of the favor of the general Hearthstone community. But as I said, going up against each other, it could be pretty difficult for the Murloc Paladin. It's going to have to be a very strong Murloc curve in order to be able to get those synergies rolling, which Boarcontrol so desperately needs.
The thing is that the Aggro Paladin has an easier job of going wide nice and early. It's the same reason it's got a better chance against Rogue. What was that?
I think there was some gesticulation because of that mulligan.
Because he got the nuts.
Darek did a little dance next to me while I was talking. It was great. But I also want to echo what Darek was saying about Murloc Paladin in a vacuum being better. I think it's sort of strange that Aggro Paladin came about first after this expansion, because the Murloc package has always just been so strong. It still is that strong. It hasn't gotten any weaker, apart from obviously the the Murloc Wally to nerf, but even after that, it was still strong, and it hasn't gotten any weaker.
I mean, Aggro Paladin has always just been hovering around the sidelines in terms of playability, I would say.
Board just threw away Murloc Tidecaller. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, he's got a plan.
He's rewarded.
He's obviously playing Valfin on turn 1 because it's just much more likely to survive.
Yep.
And then outside of that, Rockpool Hunter, you know, he wants a plan for the next few turns. So he's got 1 sorted, 2 sorted. He doesn't want to go Tidecaller Hero Power on 3, so I like throwing it away here.
And quite often in Murloc Mirrors in history, we'd be like, no, wrong crab. But no, Galactic Crawler is actually going to do quite a bit of work and potentially could be enough of a swing to even take the game.
Dan isn't running Murlocs anyway, so it's definitely the correct crab.
It's going to be absurd. If the captain comes down on 3, Dan just, I don't think, really can win the game. Obviously, Call to Arms is a great way to swing back the tempo. And actually, Corridor Creeper is another fantastic way to swing back the tempo. So maybe he's got enough to be able to start pulling it back. But Boarcontrol, it's not like he's got a bad start to get things going. He's got Valfin into Rockpool Hunter. That's the perfect 1-2. That's the Trog into Totem Golem of this meta.
Speak sweet nothings in my ear, Darryl. Remind me of the good days. How I miss Shaman. I miss it so much.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I don't.
Really? Loved a bit of aggro Shaman. And man, this is such a big tempo swing. There is double Corridor Creeper now available for Boar, so he does have to get a strong follow-up. But Sunkeeper Tarim is a strong follow-up.
Look how quickly Boarcontrol is suddenly playing. The end of last game, and now this game, he is just quick fire. He knows what he wants to do. When he sees a clear line of play, he's going for it.
I think he's enticing Dan into playing faster as well, which isn't going to go in Dan's favor.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely the right play here as well of going for the Gentle Megasaur. Some very nice options of plus attack to just take the immediate trade or just to start pushing some damage. Both seem very, very nice indeed.
Trade's just too good.
Yeah.
Can Call to Arms get anything on the board to actually help down here? Juggles don't really hit the right targets.
Nothing with charge. Dream scenario was that he gets 2 cards with charge somehow, but I don't think that's possible because there's only 1 patches. Deck hands require a weapon. But if he could have charged 2 minions in, then he would have gotten the Corridor Creeper down.
That's right, and Boarcontrol loading up on the board now for the potential Sunkeeper Tarim on the following turn. He's so far ahead, but he is so far behind on cards now. He needs to make sure that he is capitalizing on this advantage, and he's doing exactly that. Value trade after value trade after value trade. He's not relinquishing this board control no matter what.
Lost in the Jungle turning up at just the right time to try and help down here.
Wow.
Well, that's a decent hit.
That's also a decent hit. Yep.
That one's not as decent. Let's see where this goes. Nope, okay. 2 out of 4.
Yeah, 2 out of 4 ain't bad.
I think Dan will be particularly happy if he knew there was a Tarim in hand as well.
Yeah, very good point.
I mean, it's something you brought up right at the start of the game, Dan. The aggro Paladin can just go wide at the right time.
Yeah. It's so frustrating, though, that this 5-1 can just trade into the Corridor Creeper. Imagine if the knife that hit the Hydrologist hit the 5-1. That would have possibly even been game-winning for Dan.
Would have made Reynard mad.
Yeah.
Wasn't he one of the players that said he hated Knife Juggler?
Yeah.
I'm not making that up, am I?
That and Implosion were his 2 least favorite cards.
But he made Zoo.
Yeah, he did.
He brought it on
Well,
himself.
no one said he liked it, he just thought it was strong. But in this scenario, I'm just looking very, very hard at whether Tarim is actually worth it. And the trades work out pretty much exactly the same, I think. You can kill off the same amount of stuff. So whether or not it's worth it is an entirely different consideration, because Tidecaller Hero Power Redemption is a pretty strong turn outside of that. And you know, you don't want to be buffing anything at all for your opponent when you play Tarim.
Oh, this game is very close indeed.
Yeah.
Has Dan played both Call to Arms?
No, just the
No,
one.
just the one, okay. Because that's... Oh.
Wow. Playing around his opponent's Tarim by going for the killing off of the Divine Shield is very possibly going to work out nicely for Boarcontrol indeed. But it looks like Danswf might have actually turned the corner in this game. He's ahead on board. I mean, in the top deck war, who comes out on top?
Well, I mean, the fact that Dan has minions on board that may be able to be buffed up by Tarim, I guess puts him ahead right now. But in terms of actually top decking,
it's not just a top deck war. It's a top deck war where you can put up, where each player has a big taunt that they can hide their other minions around.
No.
That does make a difference.
It's a top deck war where Dan is miles ahead because the Tarim coming down first is so bad for Boarcontrol. Just having a Tarim and a 3-3 from the hero power puts Dan so far ahead in this scenario. Oh, I suppose the hero power can't come down. No. That, however, is the single worst draw he could get at this point. So he's ahead, but Boarcontrol, it's just a top deck war now. Boarcontrol, his opponent has just missed a draw, so if he can get the important cards to start wrestling this back, he is far from out of this game.
I can feel Boarcontrol right now. I mean, I know we've been joking about his body language and everything, but you can see it in his face. He is a man who knows when he's lost the game, and I think he feels that that is the swing turn. That's it. That is him out of the competition. You think that's it? I think he thinks that's it. Right. Judging not from his body language, but his face. We don't see his face very often because his hands have been covering it, but it reminds me of a schoolboy after they've lost a game of football.
Found his face.
Oh, man, if that was a Bone Mare on this turn, that would have been unbelievably good for Boarcontrol. And a Corridor Creeper is far from a bad draw, it's worth saying.
Bone Mare, does it?
I don't know, it could have been, because we've seen certain players cutting the Divine Favors for Bone Mares instead, I believe, and I believe it's very possible that Boarcontrol is not running Divine Favors in his deck, because he's expecting a meta like this, where they are completely useless, as we see from Dan.
That would definitely increase the odds. There's Leroy Jenkins. Is that playable? It definitely is playable.
Yeah.
Leroy can just trade into Corridor Creeper. The 3-3 can kill the 1-1, and Tarim is blocking these other 1-1s from doing anything. That's very nice.
Boar just has to find something a little bit more impactful, but it's just not really available in this deck at the moment. He has to find Call to Arms. Like, that's the power turn for him. And because he hasn't played one already, he's so much less likely to find it because he hasn't thinned his deck.
And there's so many bad draws in Boarcontrol's deck right now.
So many.
It's difficult for him to come back. Like, it doesn't matter if Dan's drawing bad cards. He's got the board control already.
It kind of does, though, matter if Dan's drawing bad, because he's not that far ahead. Tarim dies here.
That's true.
All of a sudden, he's not pushing that much damage. Exactly. Murloc War Leader, compared to what you can expect, isn't that bad. It's not good here,
actually. It's not, it just eats up Direwolf Alpha, that's the problem. Or the token and the Argent Protector.
And Boarcontrol's body poker language has poker face has kind of just gone out the window here, as his body language is indicating pretty extreme distress.
You're taking skill out of everything right now at this point. You are literally putting your heart into the game, and you are praying. You are hoping that you can get something significant to allow you to use your skill, all your practice, to try and take this game.
Oh my God! Dan picks the Call to Arms. That is not a poker face.
Oh my God.
That is far from a poker face, as Boarcontrol looks like he's about to cry as Dan is almost doing a Pavel.
I mean, that is the most emotion we have seen today, and what a moment that is for Dan. That basically secures him the game. That basically knocks out a previous champion of the ESL Premiership, who everyone has been saying is going to win this, unless we see a Call to Arms of Boarcontrol's own.
Oh my goodness, it comes down, and Dan is still very ahead. These cards are not good enough to contest with the big board that Dan already has.
Yeah, this has, however, thinned Boarcontrol's deck. He needs to get something a little bit more impactful, as Danswf picks up the plus attack. Blessed wall.
All right.
Oh my God, these draws.
Look at Boarcontrol rolling his eyes. Not only is he having to put up with these terrible draws, not only is he having to come to terms with the fact he's about to be eliminated, but he's having to watch Dan's reactions.
Boarcontrol will never hear the end of this. Let's be honest. He knows that Dan will reign this over forever. The patches draw.
That's got to be the concede.
How fitting.
That right there has to be the concede.
Yeah, the card to knock Boar out of the tournament is drawing patches on turn 12 of the game or whatever. It's looking like Dan is going to be progressing on in this tournament. I mean, and Boarcontrol unable to take a series at all.
Celebrating already, and rightly so as well. It's a shame. It is an absolute catastrophe to see Boarcontrol eliminated at this point in the tournament. We had such high hopes, but what a story it is for Danswf, and quite rightly should be celebrating. And
maybe not that much.
Maybe not that much. He's tapping the ESL badge because he put it on beforehand. And said, "This is going to give me good luck. This is what is going to bring me through." Boarcontrol concedes. Dan is moving forward to the next stage of the losers bracket. Boarcontrol, very unfortunately, is heading home.
Just look at the celebration.